Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another. I was about to say college football. Another UFC video. Has the UFC taken over this channel? No. I just have some interesting UFC opinions and takes I'd like to share with the world. I'm a big UFC fan. This is part two to just the fights I want to see in 2025. There are some massive fights that could be made in the UFC this year, and I hope we get to see at least most of the fights on here. Some of the fights on this list have already been made, some of them are pretty obvious, but I have some deep cuts in there as well. I have some fights in here that I really want to see that I think would be beneficial in one way or another, or just I think would be great fights that would be entertaining. So let's get right into it, man. Thank you for watching. As you all know, got to share the screen. Google Slides coming in strong in 2025. All right. Make sure y'all can see what I see. All right. First up, welterweight title fight. I'm excited, man. Only question I really have is when. Obviously, it's not going to be on 311 or 312. I don't think it's going to be on 313 because both Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov are Muslim, so it can't be during Ramadan. So I'm guessing the earliest it could be is what 314, maybe. I don't even know where that's going to be. So I just put April or May in here just because that makes the most sense. And it's kind of unfortunate because this was supposed to take place at 310. Bilal broke his foot or his toe or whatever, so he couldn't fight. So now Shavkat, he had the win over Ian Gary. Listen, Shavkat lost a lot of aura in that fight. He had the 100% finish rate. Then he went, in a close fight. I mean, he won it, but he didn't dominate. I mean, it was a lot of clinching against the fence. I mean, there was not a lot of just striking in the open. I think he did win the exchanges. I thought he was stronger than Gary. He won the fight comfortably. I think he won like four of the rounds, or he won like three clear rounds, but it just wasn't. It didn't have the intensity that a lot of people thought a Shavkat fight inherently has. So he lost a lot of what made him so special in that fight, but he still is undefeated. He is the number one contender. He deserves the title shot. So Bilal defends his belt for the first time, coming off his impressive win over Leon Edwards, one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. And I like him. A lot of people are kind of hating on this matchup, but I think it's much more interesting now that Shavkat kind of lost some of his, plot armor against Ian Gary, and it's a pretty evenly matched fight. I don't know who is going to win. I feel like Bilal was kind of too strong for Shavkat to implement his usual style of just holding people against the fence till he gets the takedown and the submission. I don't think he can really do that against Bilal. So I think we're going to see Shavkat in a lot of positions that he's not used to. Now, I don't think Bilal has the Jeff Neal type power to kind of rock and hurt Shavkat, but I think we're going to see a lot of defensive wrestling from Shavkat, a lot of interesting grappling exchanges, and I think we could see a lot of just in the middle. I think their wrestling could kind of cancel each other out a little bit, and we could see a lot of exchanges in the middle that I think are going to be underrated and pretty entertaining. So Bilal did a lot of impressive things on the feet against Leon, for example, and I think we could see the same thing for Shavkat. So I think Bilal wins this fight, but it's a massive fight or a massive fight in the welterweight division, and the winner of this fight, I think probably is going to fight Islam at the end of the year for Islam's double champ fight. Because if Islam beats Arman on the first pay per view in a couple weeks from now, then he will have five straight title wins and he'll have four title defenses, and he absolutely will have earned the right. He kind of already has earned the right, in my opinion. I think three title defenses, unless you're like in an Ilya Topuria situation where you have two just ridiculous wins, I feel like that kind of deserves its own right to move up. But Islam's case, he already has three title wins. One against or two against Volk, one against Dustin Poirier. So he already has earned the right, in my opinion, to move up. But after the Arman win, if he does win, it will be undeniable. He will absolutely deserve the right to move up and challenge for double champ status. So the winner of Bilal versus Shavkat then has the right to go into a mega super fight versus Islam for double champ status, and that would be obviously just huge, monumental. I do think Islam beats both. That's just in my opinion. He is massive for lightweight. I don't think he'd be undersized for welterweight. I think him and Bilal would be pretty similar in there, just in terms of in the cage. Shavkat would obviously have like a big height advantage over Islam, but I think Islam obviously is incredibly strong. I don't think Shavkat would be able to bully him like he has some other welterweights. So yeah, I think Islam does move up, and accomplish double champ status if he decides to do that. But a lot of interesting things could take place in the welterweight division this year. Some other fights I think would be interesting. I really want to see Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. He called out Usman at the end of his last fight versus Colby Covington. The crowd seemed to be really into it. Usman has speaked about wanting to fight Buckley. He's just been really weird about. I mean, he's been out. What he did not fight in 2024. He fought at the end of 2023. He does not have a fight book, so it's been what, like 14, 15, 16. It might even be 17 months by the time he fights. It's just way too rusty and too much time off for a veteran fighter like that. I mean, you know, I think at this point, Kamaru's doing himself a disservice. Like I think whoever he comes back against, he's just going to be way too rusty in there. And compared to a guy who the name of the game for Buckley has been activity. I think he had 4 fights last year. Obviously, won all of them on at least a 5-fight win streak in the welterweight division, coming off his most impressive win, just dominating Colby Covington in that fight. So yeah, I think Buckley versus Usman, would it be a number one contenders fight? I mean, certainly would be a title eliminator fight. There's a lot that kind of has to happen in the welterweight division. And obviously, if Islam moves up, then that's going to be the welterweight title fight. So the winner of this fight could possibly fight the winner of JDM versus Leon Edwards if that fight were to take place. But the winner of this fight obviously would put themselves right in the middle of the welterweight title picture. And it's just an entertaining fight. I mean, I think Usman versus Buckley would have a lot of interesting striking exchanges. I think Buckley's grappling has got a lot better over time. Usman, obviously, that would be the key to the game for him to win this fight. So I think it'd be an entertaining fight. There's been some trash talk back and forth between the two guys, and I think Buckley as a top contender is very entertaining. So I'd like to see this fight. I hope it takes place. And I just want to see Usman back in the ring. I mean, I don't know why he's still ranked number 3rd when he hasn't won a fight in the welterweight division in years. So, yeah. Next up, I just mentioned it just now, Leon Edwards versus JDM. Obviously, Leon no longer the champ, but I mean, I think he's going to fight on the UK card that's been announced already. They haven't announced any fights on the card, but I don't think Paddy Pimblett's going to be on there. So I think Leon is kind of the obvious choice to be the main event. I think him versus Jack de la Maddalena is just, I mean, easy money as the main event of a fight night, a big fight night. It's a no-brainer. JDM, obviously, one of the biggest prospects in the whole UFC. You can't even call him a prospect anymore. He's just a top contender now in the welterweight division. And the winner of this fight probably gets the next welterweight title fight unless Islam decides to move up. Obviously he would jump the line there. But I mean, Leon, he had 2 title defenses against Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. He got upset and dominated by Bilal. If we're being honest there, he really did not have any success in that fight. So he needs a big comeback performance if he wants to put his name back in the welterweight picture. And JDM, he's kind of just waiting on a chance to prove himself. His last performance against Gilbert Burns was very impressive. A massive knockout, even though he had like a broken arm in that fight. So, yeah, JDM is on fire, but he has not fought since, February of last year? So he's been out damn near an entire year. So there might be some rust to shake off there. But, JDM versus Leon would be a very exciting fight for me. The striking exchanges, I think, could be electric unless Leon just chooses to keep it pretty boring. But Leon, I think, does have an advantage in the grappling there. So very interesting fight. I want to see it be a 5-rounder. I probably have JDM just because of how unimpressive Leon's looked his last 2 fights. But, I mean, we could see a revamped, exciting version of Leon here. So it's a lot to break down. And, I don't really know exactly who would win, but I just want to see this fight. Like I said, I think welterweight, the top of the welterweight division is one of, if not the most interesting divisions in the UFC to me. There's just so many things that could happen. There's so many top contenders who I want to see fight each other. And this is one of those fights where I think needs to happen, preferably on the UK card in the first half of the year. Then we got Ian Gary versus Colby Covington. Colby, I don't know why, just took this stance where he just refuses to fight Ian Gary. Colby was acting like Ian is just so below him. But now Ian is above Colby in the rankings. Colby obviously has not won a fight in years. He just got dominated by Joaquin Buckley. He looked rusty in that fight. He did not look like himself. And he didn't look like himself in his previous fight either against Leon Edwards. So Colby's fought like twice in the last 2 or 3 years. He looked terrible in both of those fights. And now he's the one who, if he even wants any sort, I think there's just no way Colby's going to have to win like 3 fights to even get, sniff another title shot. But if Colby even is serious about just being a UFC fighter anymore, he's going to have to start looking at guys like Ian Gary, Gilbert Burns, like the up and coming welterweight contenders. That's why I'm concerned the UFC won't even make this fight because they might just feed Colby to one of these up and coming welterweight prospects and get him up out of there. So, but these guys have a massive beef, I should say, big rivalry. They've each called each other out in the past. So Ian Gary, I mean, he gained a lot of people's respect. I thought this could happen after his fight versus Shavkat. He kind of made Shavkat look human in a sense. So Ian Gary, he lost his O. He's no longer undefeated, but a lot of people are kind of taking him more seriously now in the welterweight division. So if he were to pick up a big win versus Colby, I think Ian would put his name right back in that mix of welterweight contenders. So maybe in the middle of next year, or this year, actually, it's 2025 now. So in the middle of this year, they're pretty much on the same timeline. They both fought in December. So I think if Colby's serious about coming back, they should fight in the summer of this year. Moving on, this is the fight that we know the date of. We know pretty much what's going to, there's no questions about this fight. I'm just really excited. A lot of people are hating on this fight. And listen, I understand that Hamzat had an amazing performance against Robert Whitaker, right? And people want to see him active and they want to see him get a title shot. But Sean Strickland deserves the. Can we stop acting? Can we stop trying to downplay what Sean Strickland did versus Israel Adesanya? Dominated Izzy. I mean, made him look just regular. One of the worst performances of Izzy's career, but Sean Strickland really just outclassed him in that fight. And then the more time passes from their first fight at the start of last year, it was the first pay-per-view of 2024, Sean Strickland and DDP. That was a razor close fight, maybe the closest fight I've ever watched in the UFC. I thought Sean Strickland won. On the rewatch, I thought Sean Strickland won. I thought he won rounds 1-5, and take your pick. I think Sean Strickland won round one. I gotta start talking a little slower here. Sean Strickland won the first and the fifth round, clear as day. DDP won the fourth round, clearly. There were 2 debatable rounds, the second and the third round. You could make the case for either one of those guys winning those rounds, but to say that the challenger, DDP, won both of the contested rounds off the challenger, or off the champion, I should say, where you could easily make the case that Sean won both of those rounds, rounds 2 and 3. I just think that's far-fetched. I think Sean won the first fight. So people are not talking about that, how it was a very extremely close split decision victory for DDP. A lot of people think Sean won the fight, including me. And then Sean, rather than getting an immediate rematch where he possibly should have gotten it, he decides to come back on UFC 302 and dominate Paulo Costa. One convincing. It was a boring fight because of Costa was just running away the whole time. Every time that Sean decided to let his hands go against Costa, he almost dropped him and finished him. So it was a dominant win, in my opinion, for Sean Strickland against Paulo Costa, and he deserves the title shot. I mean, it was a split decision loss versus DDP, and he bounced back, got a win. And in terms of DDP, he had a very exciting fight versus Adesanya. He did not look nearly as good against Izzy, by the way, that Sean Strickland did, but he kind of came back in that fight. Izzy, I think, was winning pretty clearly. DDP came back. He rocked Izzy on the feet, then got the takedown and submitted him. So very impressive win for DDP. I think these guys are just on a collision course. They have unfinished business based off their first fight, and I think, Sean deserves the rematch. And by the way, people don't talk about how entertaining that first fight that first fight was. Nobody got dropped. There was no knockdowns, but it was a bloody fight. Both guys got beat up over 5 rounds. There were some interesting grappling exchanges. It was an entertaining fight, a very high level UFC title fight. And I think we're going to see the same thing. I mean, in terms of who wins, I do think DDP has gotten better, but I think Sean Strickland's grappling and his defense, he's simply the more technical striker. He undeniably beat DDP on the feet. It's not even an argument. But DDP, the people that think DDP beat Sean Strickland, they think he did enough with the grappling to get the edge over Sean Strickland. But the thing is, he didn't really, in my opinion, do anything with the takedowns. He didn't hold Strickland down and control him for an entire round. He didn't throw out any submission attempts. There wasn't a lot of ground and pound. So I just feel like Sean Strickland can kind of neutralize a lot of what DDP does And if he defends the takedowns a little better, I do think Strickland has this in the bag. I think he does win the title off DDP in February. But I think it's going to be a very exciting fight. I'm very hyped for it. I'm looking forward to it. And I think a lot of people are kind of hating on this for I don't understand why. Next up, this is what everybody is kind of interested in. Hamzat fighting the winner of this fight later in the year, August or September. It has to happen, right? Hamzat, he doesn't have to do anything, in my opinion. His two wins at middleweight are against Kamaru Usman, one of the best welterweights ever, and Robert Whitaker. Listen, Whitaker was arguably, people were talking about Sean versus Whitaker, who deserves the title shot. So Whitaker was a top contender at middleweight, and Hamzat ran through him like he was nothing. I mean, Whitaker was on a very good back-to-back fight win streak versus Paulo Costa, and then knocking out Ikram Aliskerov in the first round. Hamzat ran through Whitaker, broke his jaw with a fucking choke. I mean, Hamzat is a monster. Everybody knows this. He has all of his aura back that he lost due to his inactivity. So, yeah, people are ready for Hamzat to get his title shot, and he deserves it. And he doesn't. He's gonna get it. He is going to fight the winner of DDP and Sean Strickland without having to fight in between. He's gonna get that title shot handed to him. Like, he deserves it. So I don't know why people are so upset. There is unfinished business between DDP and Sean that we have to see. We're gonna see it, and the winner of that fight will get fed to Hamzat. And believe me, Hamzat will absolutely run through whoever wins this fight. But I like Strickland. I think DDP is entertaining. But whoever wins this fight, brother, they're going to get mauled by Hamzat. I just don't think either of these guys has what it takes to slow down Hamzat with the defensive grappling. He is going to probably take them down and finish them in the first round, in my opinion. And even if they survive the first round, I think he'll do it in the second round. So it's just Hamzat is one of the most scary, dominant fighters in the entire UFC and the whole world. So neither of these guys are just built to stop him. I don't think there's a guy in the middleweight division who's built to stop him, to be honest with you. So, yeah, the winner of this fight will get fed to Hamzat, and I'm here to see it. It'll be extremely entertaining. Next up, in the middleweight division, Robert Whitaker versus Cal Baralho. Listen, Whitaker, he was on a very good run. Okay, he obviously lost to DDP, and then he just lost to Hamzat. He had some good wins in between, but if he wants to build himself back up, he's going to have to win a couple fights, right? He's going to have to beat an up and coming contender, okay? Because he's already booked to fight Nasruddin Imavov. So Whitaker, he's going to have to fight one of these guys down the rankings. Then he's going to probably have to move up. I think the best thing for the UFC would be for Rob to either win or lose. If Rob wins his next fight, a fight I want to see is Whitaker versus Strickland. That's probably going to have to take place in 2026, but I would like to see that in the future because we've already seen Rob versus DDP. We've already seen Rob versus Hamzat. Now we've seen him versus Izzy a couple times. So in terms of top middleweights who haven't fought each other yet, I want to see Rob versus Strickland. I think that'll be entertaining. But in order to get to that point, Rob is going to have to beat one of these up and comers. So Imavov is already booked to fight Izzy. So that leaves Cal Baralho without an opponent, and he deserves a top opponent. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Well, he's on a big win streak in the middleweight division. He recently just beat Jared Cannonier, I believe was his last fight. And so he deserves a top shot versus a guy like Robert Whitaker. And this will be a very entertaining fight. Both guys exciting strikers. Cal Baralho is known to be a finisher. And Whitaker now, he has some concerns. I mean, he got finished by DDP. He got finished by Hamzat. Does he still have the chin? Does he still have what it takes to be a top middleweight contender? A lot of questions will be answered here. I'm scared to bet against Whitaker, but I do think Baralho just kind of has what it takes to be this next big thing at middleweight. So I don't know who wins this fight. It's very entertaining. It's razor close in my opinion. But if I had to, I think Rob might be done. To be honest with you, I don't think he has what it takes to beat these top 5 guys anymore. He could be a really good gatekeeper. He could beat a lot of guys, outside the top 5, for example. But Araujo might just be too big of a force right now for him to come, for him to overcome. So I just want to see this fight. This is a top contender middleweight fight that I think needs to happen. Just like welterweight, there's a lot of guys at the top, Mavov, Araujo, Izzy, Rob, DDP, Sean, Hamzat. I want to see these matchups take place. So, yeah, Whitaker versus Araujo, I think, will be an exciting top level matchup. Next up, at light heavyweight, I don't know what is taking so long for the UFC to make this fight. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Please, can we please see this fight? This should have happened a while ago. Magomed and Ankalaev, I think Magomed was supposed to fight him on UFC 300, to be honest with you, but he did not. I don't think he chose to take that fight for some reason. I don't know what happened really. But he just recently at UFC 308 beat what was his name? Alexander Rakic. He beat him convincingly, won that fight. So it's just no question about it. Magomed is the absolute number one contender in this division. The only if Alex didn't fight Ankalaev, the only fights he could fight are rematches and trilogies that we don't need to see. Who wants to watch Alex Pereira knock out Yuri or Jamal Hill again? I mean, nobody. Magomed is just absolutely the biggest threat to Alex in the lightweight division. And if Alex does not fight this guy, it's impossible to say he's not ducking him. There's no other top contenders right now at light heavyweight. And I mean, just make the fight happen. Obviously, it cannot happen until after Ramadan. So just wait until March or April and let this headline UFC 314 or 315, whichever one that Bilal and Shafkat's not headlining. So it's kind of an obvious thing for me. I don't know why. Maybe they're just waiting because they haven't announced the whole pay-per-views yet. They haven't even announced 314 or 315 yet. So I guess we just have to wait. But if this fight does not take place in the middle of this year, I just don't know what's going on. I mean, it just has to happen. So in terms of who wins, I just cannot bet against Alex right now. He is just looking too dominant at light heavyweight. He's already, he's putting together a resume to be one of the best light heavyweights ever in just a year and a half. So, but Magomed absolutely would be his biggest test, and it needs to happen. So please get this done, UFC. It's the most obvious thing on this video so far. After that, though, Yuri versus Jamal Hill. This is already confirmed. It's taking place. I'm just excited to see it. I mean, this is a fight that the fans wanted before Alex even moved up to light heavyweight, right? Because Yuri was the champ. He had to vacate the title because of injury after he beat Glover Teixeira. And then Jamal Hill became champ, and he had to vacate to injury after beating Glover Teixeira. So both these guys won the championship off a common opponent. They both had to vacate after winning the championship, and then they both got knocked out by Alex Pereira. So, very similar stories here at light heavyweight. And I think, the UFC obviously likes the stuff going into the fight because they already booked it. It's taking place, confirmed. So the winner of this fight, I guess the winner of this fight will get another fight versus Alex. If it's Yuri, there's just no way you can give Yuri a title shot, unfortunately. You can't get knocked out by the same guy twice in 1 year and then win one fight and oh, well, third time's the charm. So Yuri, I don't think you can really put him in the title shot if he wins. But Jamal Hill, if he were to beat Yuri, especially if you were to knock him out, for example, I think there's a strong case to be made for Jamal Hill getting a rematch versus Alex. He's been talking shit nonstop for the last year. He's making a fool of himself, really. But, he did, it was a quick knockout versus Alex. And if Yuri deserves to get a title rematch, then why would Jamal Hill not, based off that logic. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line for Jamal Hill. Yuri, I just don't know what happens for him if he does win this fight. But I don't know. It's an exciting fight. I can almost guarantee somebody's going to get finished here. It is only 3 rounds, I think, though. It should be 5 rounds if it's a top level, fight at light heavyweight. But I'm excited for it. I think it's certainly going to be entertaining, and somebody's probably going to go to sleep here. So I'm excited for it. Next up, though, at light heavyweight, this is a fight which has not been announced. I don't even know what the UFC is thinking about this, but this is a fight that I want to see. Dominic Reyes coming off his historically great downfall. He has just won back-to-back fights in stoppage fashion versus Dustin Jacoby and Dustin Jacoby and Anthony Smith. Dominic Reyes has just finished both of them in 2024. He is now looking like he's back at light heavyweight. And Khalil Roundtree, he boosted his stock massively in his loss to Alex Pereira because he looked like the most competitive fight for him at light heavyweight. And he was. It was a very entertaining fight. Roundtree was arguably winning the first couple rounds, then Alex built into the fight, and he just broke Roundtree down in rounds 3 and 4. It was brutal, really. But Roundtree obviously gained a lot of respect, and people are very excited to see what he does next. Now, I don't really think Roundtree deserves a top 3 guy. I think he deserves a fight to get himself back in the mix, certainly. And I think this is the fight. Reyes on a win streak. Both of these guys have big names now in the light heavyweight division. And the winner of this fight, you can see, I mean, you can make a strong case for the winner of this fight to get a number one contenders fight, maybe versus the loser of Jamal Hill and Yuri Prochazka. Like, for example, if Yuri beat Jamal Hill, then put Roundtree or Reyes versus Jamal Hill, or vice versa, right? So it's a very interesting fight for me. I hope the UFC doesn't. I just think it'd be very entertaining. Reyes might get put to sleep in brutal fashion, but I just think, two big names at light heavyweight in similar positions in terms of the rankings. So I would like to see this fight take place. Next up, I mean, what can I say that has not been said about this matchup? It needs to happen. John Jones has been ducking Tom Aspinall in historic fashion. I've never seen a man defend an interim title, but that's what Tom Aspinall did against Curtis Blades in ridiculous fashion. Tom Aspinall knocks out everybody in the first minute at heavyweight. I mean, listen, let's call a spade a spade. John Jones choosing to defend the title against 50-year-old firefighter Stipe Miocic instead of Tom Aspinall is one of the biggest disgraces in UFC history. It is just it's hard to take the heavyweight division seriously when shit like that happens. Okay, but John Jones, obviously, he gets no credit on this channel for knocking out a retired firefighter. But that he did that, a lot of people glazed him for no reason. Now I mean, it's ridiculous. I could make an entire video of why I hate the John Jones Stipe Miocic fight, but now that he did that, he got a bogus BS win on his resume now. Dana White and a lot of people are very confident that this fight will take place. It just has to take place. It's one of, if not the biggest fights in the heavyweight history. I mean, you have the dominant up and comer who's putting away everybody versus the established guy who he's only fought 2 times in the last 5 years. But it's a big name. John Jones is one of the biggest, if not the biggest names in the sport right now. Tom Aspinall, if you were to finish John Jones, would be one of the biggest moments in history in the UFC. I think it'll happen. People can call me a casual all they want, but John Jones has never faced anybody like Tom Aspinall. I mean, it's all the things like that John Jones doesn't want. He's never fought somebody that's that younger than him. He's never fought somebody that's that much bigger than him, stronger, more athletic. I mean, he would be at a major disadvantage in this fight. But if you're the champion, you fight the top contenders. Tom Aspinall is the champion of the heavyweight division. John Jones is just the gimmicky guy, the UFC guy. It's just so much going into this fight. It would be a massive build-up to a massive pay-per-view. It might even break records in the modern UFC era. So it just has to happen. It's just, I don't even need to make a video saying that it needs to happen. It's just obvious. So I hope and pray we see this before it's all said and done. And that's going to be it for this video, man. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. And yeah, man, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.